All right, at this point you should have the town wetlands for Lincoln County. And let's open that up and take a look at the attribute table. And as you remember, when we did the intersect, every individual piece of wetland now has the intersected information from town. Now, I think this is kind of redundant. We don't need to see all of these independent, all these independent pieces for Ulna, because we want to measure all of these wetland areas at once so we can know how many acres of wetland are in Ulna together. So I'd kind of like to, in some ways, kind of dissolve all of the redundant records so that there's just one unique record for each town, so that when I click the one record for Ulna, all of the wetland areas will be highlighted at once. So what I'm going to do in that case is I'm going to use a tool called Dissolve. And always remember to kind of deselect everything before you start running a tool. There's a pretty good chance that if I ran the tool right now, it would only work on this particular feature right there. So I'm going to deselect everything. And what I'm going to do now is go up to my vector toolbox and grab a geoprocessing tool called Dissolve. And I want to dissolve the town wetlands file by town, right? And I'm going to have the output called, I'm going to call it wetlands dissolved, or dissolve. Say that's okay. Add result to canvas. Now the tool can take a little while to run, so I'll see you on the other side. All right, you should have a dissolved wetlands layer now, so let's take a look at what that is. Okay, there's my old town wetlands and my new dissolve, which looks exactly the same pretty much, but when we open the attribute table, we'll see, aha, great. We only have 29 records now instead of, what do we have before here? We had 5,665 records, right? And the reason this is important is because now if we calculate the area, of course, for each of these records, we're going to get the total for each town, right? There's all of Ulna right there, right? Here would be Damariscotta. So let's go ahead and calculate that area. All right, so how do we do that? Well, I'm going to say that, unselect everything, I want to add a new field. And I'm going to do that in something called the field calculator. And this is another window that might make you feel nauseous, but it's going to be one of our best friends. And so we're going to keep using it. So I'm going to add a field that I want to call acres. I want to know how many acres each of these shapes has. I want to measure that. I want to measure its geometry, the geometry of each of these records. So I'm guessing that we're going to want to be able to use a decimal just in case there are lots of small pieces of land that might be, this one's 2.5 acres, that one's 3.5. It'd be good to have at least a couple of decimal points. So the precision means how many places after the decimal are we going to allow. And let's just do 2 for now. And we're not dealing with our fields and values. We're trying to create values from geometry, the geometry of the actual file. So what I do is I go down here and I've got geometry and it says, oh, you want to know what do you want to know? The perimeter, the length, the area. I'm going to choose area, just double click that. But then we see this crazy number over here, 757,323.111. This is our preview of what type of information we're going to get out if we ask it to do this for us. And you might say, okay, well that must be square something or other. Well, it's square map units, and the map units are down here. Of course, these are just the coordinates in our system, and we'll talk more about coordinate systems to come. But how do we find out what our map units are? Well, to do that, let's close out of this. We'll come back. I need to find out what map units are being used in this actual file, in the wetlands dissolve file. So what I'm going to do is right-click Wetlands Dissolve, go into the Properties, and in the Properties I can see under General that I have this CRS right here, this Coordinate Reference System, and it says a bunch of things that you probably don't understand, and that's okay. The key to finding out what that is there's a definition to it. So if we go here, and I just clicked this here, this is the selector. We're going to leave it what it is for now. We're going to keep it the same. That's what we want. This definition down here has this one section. It says units, and it says equals M. If it ever says equals M, it means that the units are in meters, right? If it said FT, it would be feet. So meters and feet tend to be the most used units. We'll almost always have those two. So meters, okay. Our map units are in meters, and so when we go back and let's go like we're going to make our field again. I'm going to make an acres field here in my field calculator, and I say I want to make one called acres. I want it to be a decimal so I can have 2 decimal places. I want to calculate the aerial geometry. So this must mean that, as an example, one town has close to 757,000 square meters of wetland. Now I want it to be acres. So how do I convert square meters to acres? Well, I think the easiest thing to do is just ask Google, how many square meters in an acre? And Google tells me that there are 4,046.86 square meters for every acre. So if we divide our raw value of square meters by this number, it's going to turn it into acres, right? So I'm going to copy that and say divided by that, and aha, 187 acres approximately. So that's cool. I'm just going to go ahead and say OK. I'm pretty sure my math is correct. And voila, there we go. We get acreage per town. And that's interesting. It looks like there's a town called Knox County Island. I wonder what that is. Anyway, so now we have all of our data. Now we just have to show everything in kind of our final map that shows our analysis. All right. So I'm going to just do a few quick kind of symbology choices and let you play around with the map making part. And the last video will just be to show you how to use the print composer. The first thing I need to do, though, before I start doing my cartography is I'm going to save my edits and toggle that off. And so now all of my information here in the acres is saved. It's no longer in virtual memory, so that's great. Cool. I think what I want to do with this map is I want to use some kind of base map that reminds us of kind of what the ground looks like from the sky. So I think I'm going to go to my Open Layers plugin that you got in the first prep video, and I'm going to use a Google satellite kind of background. And I think I'll put that on the bottom once it loads. You might need a fast internet connection for this, but yeah, that's pretty good. So that the Google satellite's going to go underneath everything. I think I'm gonna double click this, which brings me to the properties. This is the towns layer. For the town style, I think I'm going to go to simple fill. I'm going to make it transparent. Right? I didn't click this right here. I clicked just the arrow on the side. Transparent. I'm going to make the border white, and I'm going to make it a little thicker. You know, maybe I should make it dotted even. Dash dot. That's kind of attractive sometimes. Let's see how that works. Say OK. Ooh, not so much, eh? Kind of gross looking. We can mess around with that if you want. One thing I might do is select only the land so that we don't have the coastline being traced. I think that's kind of gross. So there are different ways we could kind of alter this. I think for my intents and purposes, all I care about is making it not look completely disgusting. So go back to the simple fill here. Make it skinnier again. I think it's too thick. And I'm going to hit apply, and that's more attractive. I think it's still too strong, so I'm going to make it half transparent and hit apply. And it's starting to look more attractive. It's kind of okay. Still not super, but... And then I'm going to label this layer, with the town label, and make the color of that white. And I'm clicking fast, but you're going to have to just experiment with this. I'm going to make this also 50% or so. Apply. And yeah, interesting. I wonder, so do you guys know what's going on right here? It's that multi-part feature problem, right? If I really want to show only one label per town, what do you think I have to do? I'm not going to tell you. I'm going to see if you guys can figure it out, and then in class we'll talk about it. Why are the labels appearing all over the place, and how do you solve that problem? How do you make it so that there's only one label for each town, for each polygon in the township file? If you can figure that out, go for it. That'd be great. So I'm going to shut that off, say OK. And the last bit of my map before I let you guys play is I'm gonna make the wetlands kind of stand out a little more. So I double click that, and it brings me to the properties. I'm gonna go to the style, and I'm gonna get rid of the border. I think it clutters the page, so I'm gonna get rid of that border. And I'm gonna make the fill. Let's make it red. I know that's kind of crazy, and then I make it slightly transparent. Let's see how that works. It's okay. There are reasons for good cartography, but the GIS analysis, of course, was the focus for this week. And I want to show the county boundaries as well. So I'm going to go back up into my data here, which is starting to get unruly. Lincoln County, drag that in. And that's our focus. And so I'm going to double click Lincoln County. I'm going to make this transparent. I'm going to make the border, let's see, let's make the border, it doesn't really matter. We can make it white, just like the other one, except maybe it gets a little tiny bit thicker and there's no dotted line. Let's just see what that does. The coastline problem again, right? There's another cool fix for this, and in the next video of the print composer, I'll show you my finished map, but I'm not going to show you how I got there because I want you to try to get there yourself. So play around with the labeling techniques, play around with the symbology, come up with a map that you're not ashamed of, and hopefully, and we can talk about how you came up with that in class. We'll do more intense kind of cartography in another lesson. So, cheers.